Good morning. I'll wait a few more moments before we get started. All right, I'll go ahead and kick things off. Good morning. It is 9:04 on September 13th, 2023. I'm Hearing Officer Nicole Kinsey with the Administrative Hearings Office of the State Water Resources Control Board. This is the third day, it's Wednesday, third day of phase 3 of the hearing in the court reference proceeding in the case of City of Marina versus RMC Lonestar, Monterey County Superior Court case number 20CV001387. I will do an abbreviated version of my normal introductions this morning, which is to say this hearing is being conducted by Zoom and broadcast live on the AHO YouTube channel. During the proceeding today, if you're having any technical difficulties and can't communicate with us, please email the AHO at admin@waterboards.ca.gov. And assisting me today are the usual staff. The staff of the Administrative Hearings Office, Nicole Mullen, Skylar Anderson, and Kyle Woldridge, as well as Regina Graziano with the Office of Research Planning and Performance. I'm not going to take appearances today unless there is someone joining us today who has not already had the opportunity to introduce themselves other than our witnesses, who will have an opportunity to introduce themselves later today. So with that, I will look to the room. Is there anyone new joining us today who has not yet had a chance to say hello? I think I see all familiar faces. All right, I think where we left off yesterday, and I will turn to the room to see if there's anything else we should address before we get started. But I believe where we left off yesterday was with the cross-examination of Dr. Ye. We had, according to my calculation, 34 minutes left on the clock for 1 hour of cross-examination. Of course, we've had some flexibility with that depending on the productivity of the cross-examination. But I think my understanding where we are is that I would turn to you, Mr. Burchard, for cross-exam of Dr. Ye. But before I do that, is there anything else we should address today before we get started?
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one logistical item not related to the witnesses is Ms. Muzine was kind enough to point out that our revised Exhibit 187, which was accepted, after the status conference to remove the references to the updated recharge sensitivity runs. When we uploaded the revised one, we didn't reattach the tables and figures and appendices. So this morning we submitted a replacement 187 with all of the attachments as appropriately edited.
Thank you, Mr. Osias.
And thank you, Ms. Mazine, for pointing that out to us.
Yes, thanks to all of you. It takes a village. We should, I think my team is listening, we should have this organized, but please, of course, double check our files at some point. I think what we'll do is we'll either delete the old revised Exhibit 187 or put it in a separate folder to make clear that that is not the replacement 187. So thank you. Ms. Meisenheimer, I think you had something else to add as far as housekeeping.
Yeah, thank you. One additional issue. One of our experts, Mike Tietze, we anticipate him giving his presentation today. We did want to alert the AHO that he has a course he's teaching at a conference from 1:30 to 3:30 this afternoon. And so we may need to take him a little bit out of order. Again, we'll sort of see how the day goes, exactly what that means, but we did want to alert you to the issue.
Thank you, Ms. Meisenheimer. Hopefully, if the stars align, it'll be fine. But I appreciate you letting me know, and we'll work around that.
Thank you.
With that, are we ready to turn to cross-exam this morning? Is there anything else? Prepared and ready to go, and I will turn next to Dr. Gay.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Kinsey. Good morning, Dr. Ye.
Let me go ahead and say good morning, Dr. Ye, as well. And Dr. Ye, do you recall I administered the oath to you yesterday? Do you recall taking that oath?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So I think with that, we can go ahead and I'll hand it over to you, Mr. Burchard.
Thank you. Dr. Ye, you were the one primary responsible for CalAm in constructing the transport model that we're using in these phase 3 proceedings, correct?
Yes, with Mr. Leffler and Mr. Durbin.
In your opinion, are transport models in general reliable?
Can you repeat your question?
In your opinion, are transport models reliable?
Our transport model, you mean both?
No, I mean transport models in general.
Objection vague as to reliable for what purpose?
I'm going to overrule the objection. I understand it's vague. Dr. Ye, this is a general question. If you can please answer to the best of your ability as an expert.
Yes, I have 30 years solid transport model experience, and so lots of those solid transport model results was used by state regulatory purpose.
Right. And for these phase 3 proceedings, do you believe that CalAm's transport model is reliable?
Yes, for the purpose of this proceeding.
And you believe CalAm's transport model can be appropriately used to predict the future conditions in the 180, 400-foot aquifer subbasin and the Monterey subbasin. Is that correct?
For the prediction, also rely on the assumptions used for the prediction. So lots of the assumption used by this proceeding were based on the direction from AHO. For example, the scenarios, the hydrology. Yeah.
Do you believe that that makes these models an unreliable predictor of future conditions?
I will say reliable, but you just need to understand the assumptions.
You believe CalAm's transport model accurately depicts current conditions in the basin?
Can you be more specific?
What don't you understand?
Well, like this is a steady state model. I don't think it's current conditions.
When you set up your transport model, you put in initial TDS conditions, correct?
Correct.
The purpose of that is try to depict what exists today, right? That's what the initial conditions are for?
Yes.
Okay, so do you believe that CalAm's transport model, the initial conditions in CalAm's transport model, accurately predict current conditions?
the initial TDS concentration used for KLM model were based on the available observed data. We value that in our model. Sure, there are certain areas we don't have data available, but I don't think that will make the model unreliable. You can still analyze that by compare with without under project conditions.
What areas do you not have data for?
We have that initial TDS concentration showing our modeling report, and also show the available data used to construct that contours.
Yeah, I understand that. You
Yeah.
said that you don't have some data in some areas. What data do you not have?
Well, it's really, if you look at that distribution of the data, certainly in some area, you just don't have control points.
Okay, can we please look at a CalAm Exhibit 177?
That was CalAm 177, correct, Mr. Burchard?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mullen. Dr. Ye, you're familiar with this exhibit?
Yes.
Can we please go to PDF page 51? Dr. Ye, these figures depict the initial conditions used in CalAm's transport model, correct?
Yes.
And the blue dots, those are the control points that you were just mentioning?
Yes.
Okay, and the initial conditions, they're an important factor in the reliability of the transport model, correct?
Not completely for the purpose of this proceeding.
You don't think the initial conditions are an important factor in the reliability of the model?
I don't think it's like really important because depending on the purpose of the model.
Just yes or no. Do you think initial conditions are important? The initial conditions in the transport models are important for this phase 3 proceeding?
Objection, he's given the best answer he can.
I'm going to sustain the objection, although I am interested to hear more about to unpack what Dr. Ye has said, because I'm curious. So maybe Mr. Burchard, can you try again on a question? But I do encourage you to continue in this line.
Dr. Ye, why do you think that the initial conditions for the transport model may not necessarily be an important factor in these proceedings?
Yeah, so for example, we want to quantify the ocean water percentage from the stem wells under project condition. So I can put this initial condition showing here, get the results, but I can also put like 0 for all these model layers. Then just assign when I run the model, I use 33,500 milligram per liter for ocean water. So then you will get similar results after, maybe a couple of years.
So are you saying if you just made the initial conditions in the ocean consistent with the ocean and made everything else 0, after a couple years, your model would simulate what you think the initial conditions are today?
Not that's not necessary initial condition for today. So it's really like I'm saying for the purpose of quantify the ocean water percentage. You can isolate just one variable to ocean water, then you get that.
What do you mean by ocean water percentage?
It's the amount of water from ocean source extract by the stem wells.
Okay, and if we're talking about not ocean water percentage, if we're talking about the movement of the seawater intrusion front, would initial conditions be an important factor in the reliability of those predictions?
In that case, the seawater intrusion front then will depending on the depending on the initial concentration, but also you compare with without the projects. It's really any additional mass from the ocean water flow into the basin.
So if we want to measure or predict the movement of the seawater intrusion front, with or without the project, are the initial conditions used in the transport model an important factor in those predictions?
Yeah, I still say I don't know how to say like important. Certainly something we want know that existing seawater intrusion front. But again, all this model simulation is to compare with without projects.
Looking on this screen, the blue dots, those are your control point wells, correct?
Yes.
And those are the points that you have data for, and that's what you use to create your initial conditions, correct?
Yes. In addition to this, we also use current seawater intrusion front from Monterey County.
You're referring to the maps that are published by the Monterey County Water Resource Agency?
Yes.
And those maps don't correlate to the layers in your model, correct?
So county provide that seawater intrusion for 180-foot aquifer and 400-foot aquifer. So we use that for 180 and the 400-foot aquifer.
Your model divides the 180-foot aquifer into multiple layers, correct?
Yes.
The Monterey County maps do not provide separate seawater intrusion front maps for each of those layers, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In what exhibit is the data located for the control points on this figure?
I don't recall.
Dr. Ye, is it true that you have not provided the data that corresponds to these control points?
Yeah, I think not in the TM. Yeah.
I'm sorry, to be clear, you've not provided the data for these control points to either Marina Coast, the city, or the AHO, correct?
Correct.
Without that data, it is not possible for another modeler to verify the initial conditions used by CalAm, correct?
But we list the source of the data. So I think MCWD, they have a similar source of the data. It's very easy to verify if those are correct or not.
Well, Dr. Ye, I would agree. If you have the data, it is easy to verify the initial conditions, correct?
I think his answer was MCWD has the data because he identified the source.
Thank you, Mr. Osias. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think that was actually Mr. Burchard's. I mean, that was the answer to his question before, but Mr. Burchard, can you repeat your latest question was slightly different, I think.
Dr. Ye, if a party has the data, then it would be easy to verify the initial conditions used by CalAm, correct?
Yes.
And if they do not have the data, they would not be able to verify that, correct?
They can use a different approach to do it. You know, just like for this proceeding, I have to lots of additional work to verify MCWD's model because the files not provided to me.
But in doing so, if you don't have the data that was used by the initial party, you can't check the specific data they used with the results that they got, correct?
Yes.
Okay, can we look at page 18 of this exhibit? And this paragraph. Dr. Ye, can you please read this paragraph to yourself?
The one at the top of the page.
Yes.
Initial TDS
Just read it to yourself. You don't have to read it out loud.
Okay.
Now, when you say you identified the data, is this the paragraph you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. So the monthly hydrologic working group reports, which months?
Yeah, they are series reports. The one we use 2019 data.
Okay, and you said it's Fort Ord Information System data. From when?
It's also 2019. Yeah.
What month was the date? Were the calculations taken?
It's that whole year.
That whole year?
Yes.
Calendar year or water year?
This is a water year.
You have the data that you use to calculate the TDS initial concentrations for your transport model?
Yes.
Is it possible for you to provide that to the city, Marina Coast, and the AHO?
Yes.
Can I ask that you do so? No, I'm sorry, that's more of a question for Ms. Kinsey.
You can certainly ask, and then I'm going to turn to CalAM's counsel to see if there's an objection to that request. I'm looking to you, Mr. Osias. You may be thinking. You have,
Well, oh yes, I am thinking, and I'm wondering whether the model files contain the data already, notwithstanding they weren't attached to the TM, because his answer was, as I heard it, they weren't included in the TM. That's not the world of information that was shared. There was also meetings between the experts. So I can either speculate, or I can, when we have a break, go through all these alternatives with Dr. A to make sure when he responded that they weren't attached to the TM, that they weren't included anywhere else.
So it sounds like, but it's, thank you, Mr. Osias. I appreciate that. It sounds like you have no theoretical objection to sharing that information. I mean, I have some questions about how that, at this point, whether sharing the information is helpful, given that we're near the close of the hearing. But it sounds like if it's fairly easy to do so, and you'd be willing to share that if it hasn't already been shared.
And
Right,
just to be clear, my request was also to submit it to the AHO, not just the parties, because the parties were instructed to provide all the data necessary to recreate what they had done to the AHO, to allow the AHO to verify that if need be.
Well, and I'm not, Mr. Burchard, I'm not going to rule on the admissibility of additional data at this point in the proceeding. I think that's another question, but maybe let's get to the bottom of, and we can do this over a break, get to the bottom of whether the data has already been made available, and that may circumvent this question.
So I have a two-part response, which is if we've included it somewhere else, we would identify where. And if we haven't included it and we have it readily available, I don't think we have an objection to sharing it, so long as the quid pro quo is applicable, because we have not received the same sort of data on a variety of fronts from the other side. We'll identify, I don't mean that to be in the abstract, as we identify that, we would expect the same treatment.
So here's what I would suggest. This sounds like an issue that Mr. Osias, you are going to look into with your client. And Mr. Burchard, I'll give you a chance to add if there's more to add. And then maybe we should come back to this issue at some point during the hearing process to see if one, it sounds like Mr. Osias, you're suggesting there may be data that you discover you're interested in seeing as a result of cross-examining the district's or the city's witnesses. And so we may have an additional exchange of information. Am I understanding you correctly, Mr. Osias?
Yes, you are. And I do think a break to discuss this is appropriate, in part to confirm whether it's already been provided or not, or made available.
Understood.
In some other way. But yes, you understood my position well. I don't think it should be a one-way street, regardless of how you treat it.
Understood. And then Mr. Burchard, I guess one, is there anything you want to add on this point? And then two, my follow-up question is going to be, do you think it would be appropriate for us to return to this so that you can complete your cross-examination of Dr. Gay, and then we could come back to this issue? And also, just so you know, I'm adding time on the clock. This is not coming out of your minutes, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think we can come back. I'd like to continue the cross and we can come back to this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burchard.
Thank you. Could we go back to page 51 in this exhibit, please? Dr. Ye, these control point wells that I'm looking at, is each one of these supposed to represent well data that went into your initial conditions?
Yes.
Okay, so in the lower end, those are the lower end of layers 5 and 7. Am I to assume that that is Fort Ord data?
I'm sorry, the lower end means southern western? What does lower end mean?
Southern. Dr. Ye, do you understand?
I don't understand. Would you please repeat your question?
Can you see layer 5?
Yes.
Okay, in the south western side of the model near the coast, do you see a cluster of, I don't know, was that 10 wells?
I saw 9.
Do you see a cluster of wells?
Yes.
Southern near the coast. Okay, is that Fort Ord data? Do you know?
Just by looking at this, I do have answer to your question.
Based on what we have in front of us, we can't tell what those data points correlate to, correct?
Right.
Okay, thank you. As part of this phase 3 proceedings, you submitted testimony on a lower recharge sensitivity analysis, correct?
Yes.
And then you said you performed that because it was intended to correct what you perceived to be an error in the application of recharge in CalAm's 2023 water board steady state model. Is that correct?
The original recharge used for that model, we think that is overestimate the recharge. So we want to do a sensitivity run to get a amount of a recharge we believe that is representative. Then we can compare any sensitivity on the predictive model results provided. It's kind of like a bookend.
Dr. Ye, I'm doing my best to ask very simple yes and no questions so that this can move faster. So you did a lower recharge sensitivity analysis. The purpose was to correct what you perceived to be an error in the recharge calculations of your flow model, correct?
Yeah, my answer is not. It's to provide a sensitivity for lower recharge.
Okay. It wasn't because you perceived that there was an error in your initial model?
Yeah, I understand that thing, but I also look at the amount of recharge used by MCWT. So it's pretty similar in the Dongsan area. So I don't think that is error or something, but just like everything you will have a range of estimation.
Dr. Ye, did you author CalAm Exhibit 177?
Yes.
Okay, can we go to page 39, please? This is fine. The second paragraph on the screen that starts the CalAm WB SSM 2023 modeling results presented to date as described in CalAm Exhibit 141 incorporated an anomalously high estimate of recharge in the FO-SVA area due to a translation error from Mr. Durbin's regional model water balance outputs to the CalAm water board steady state model 2023. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you believe that's a correct statement?
Yeah, so I just explained, what
I just wanted you to say yes or no.
What was your question again, Mr. Burchard?
Is that a correct statement?
The first sentence.
First sentence.
Thank you.
Yes,
And again, you drafted Exhibit 177, correct?
yes,
So you wrote that sentence initially?
yes,
Okay. Now, you knew about the error in translating the recharge prior to appearing at the phase 2 hearings, correct?
yes,
Okay. You did not advise the city, Marina Coast, or the AHO at that time that you believed there had been an error in the translation of recharge from Mr. Durbin's model to CalAM's model, correct?
yeah, like I mentioned,
Dr. Ye, this is very simple. You appeared at the phase 2 hearings and gave testimony, correct?
correct.
Okay. When you appeared and you gave your presentation about your testimony, did you advise the AHO that you had made an error in translating recharge from Mr. Durbin's model to CalAM's flow model?
No,
No, you knew that you had made an error though, and you did not advise anybody, correct?
like I mentioned, that's just like I believe it's overestimation, but it's similar to MCWD recharge. So
At the time you appeared at the phase 2 hearings, did you believe that CalAM's flow model had an error in recharge?
I'd like to interject here that Mr.
No,
Durbin
no,
pointed
no,
that
no,
out
no,
in
Mr. Durbin,
that phase.
Mr. Leffler,
And so
objection.
he
Mr.
didn't
Leffler,
think it
These are
was
very simple
necessary
questions
to
Leffler.
elaborate.
about Dr.
No.
Ye's testimony.
Now, let's have one questioner. Mr. Leffler, you are on the panel. You can follow up. I'll let you follow up with a response to Mr. Burchard's question. I'm interested in your response. But I think we should be clear about the response here from Dr. Ye, and then I'll turn to you, Mr. Leffler.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank you.
Kinsey, I hate to have so much dialogue, but is the witness to assume that what Mr. Burchard's asking about in terms of an error is what's contained in sentence 1?
I think that's a fair clarification. I had made that assumption, but maybe Mr. Burchard, if you would clarify that just for the record in your question, and that will help us focus the question, please.
Sure, I can try and do it this way. Dr. Ye, again, in sentence 1, you believe that there was a translation error resulting in the wrong recharge rate being applied to CalAM's 2023 flow model, correct?
Objection, it doesn't say wrong, it says anomalously high.
All right, Mr. Burchard, can you attempt the question again with an anomalously high recharge estimate?
Dr. Ye, when you appeared at the phase 2 testimony, did you believe that you had made a translation error resulting in an anomalously high recharge rate in CalAM's flow model?
yes,
Okay. You did not advise anybody of that translation error at the phase 2 hearings, correct?
I think before I testify, Mr. Durbin already reviewed that the error in the
I don't think that answered my question.
yeah, before my testify, Mr. Durbin already reviewed that.
I do believe that Mr. Durbin testified that he thought you made an error in the application of recharge. I believe that's true. Did you tell anybody that you believed you'd made an error in the application of recharge?
I didn't.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'm going to pause there, Mr. Burchard. I think Mr. Leffler had interjected. I'm interested to know, and I'm not taking this out of your time, of course, but I'm interested to know, Mr. Leffler, whether you had an additional comment here with respect to, it sounds like with respect to the timing of when this translation error was discovered, and then possibly whether or not it was there was testimony about it during phase 2. Do you care to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to clarify that Mr. Durbin had pointed that out. So both Dr. Ye and myself didn't think it was necessary to repeat that. And I don't recall that we were questioned further on that after he stated that. So that was, that was our, we didn't see any reason to discuss it further in our respective testimonies because Mr. Durbin had already pointed it out. And I would emphasize that this is not an error in the model. It's just an anomalously high estimate of recharge that's in the model that's very similar to what MCWD has in their model. And these sensitivity runs were just to show what the results would be if we had an estimate of recharge in the model that's more consistent with Dr. Durbin's soil water balance results. And we discovered that it doesn't make that much difference for most of the scenarios, except as we've described in our documentation.
I'd like to follow up with a quick question with Mr. Leffler and something he just said.
That seems fair. Go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Leffler, I think you just said that you and Dr. Ye did not feel the need to discuss it at the phase 2 hearings. Is that correct?
Well, as I said, Mr. Durbin had pointed it out, and then there was no follow-up that I recall on it.
I believe your testimony, I believe in your initial statements, you were speaking for Dr. Ye as well. And you said that both you and Dr. Ye did not feel the need to bring it up. Did I state that correctly?
I said that, and I may have spoken for him out of place. But
okay, so here's my next question. Did you have any direct conversations with Dr. Ye regarding the translation error in recharge prior to the phase 2 hearings?
Well, I think all three of us had talked about that with Mr. Durbin.
Okay, was the decision for you and Dr. Ye to not mention it in your direct presentations during phase 2 a conscious decision?
Well, I think, as I said, Mr. Durbin had already described it.
So is that a yes or a no? Did you have a conversation with Dr. Ye or anyone else, and you made the decision not to raise it at the phase 2 hearings?
No, I didn't talk to either of them about it at that time because Mr. Durbin had already mentioned it. Okay,
so you spoke for Dr. Ye, even though you hadn't actually spoken with Dr. Ye. Is that correct?
Like I said, I just had assumed that he probably had the same, take on it as I did after Mr. Durbin mentioned it.
Okay, so you were speculating.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So Dr. Ye, I think you talked a little bit about the translation error yesterday, and it had something to do with the urban area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And basically, because in urban areas, there's more streets and parking lots and water doesn't recharge into the ground as fast. Is that correct?
Right, more impervious area.
Surfaces, yeah. You get more stormwater in those areas though, right? It, instead of seeping into the ground, it runs into the stormwater drains.
Yes, more runoff.
Okay. Are you aware that Marina Coast has a stormwater collection and recharge program throughout its service area in the Monterey Subbasin, which includes the DSA area?
Yeah, I can identify some from the aerial photo, but I don't know the operations or the the actual amount of population.
Okay. So was that stormwater collection and recharge program factored into your recharge analysis, either initially during the error or during your lower sensitivity study?
I have to I defer this to Mr. Durbin, his soil moisture balance model.
That's fair. Can we look at CalAm Exhibit 187, please? And I think at this point, we're looking at the second revised CalAm 187.
And Mr. Brochard, I just wanted to do a quick time check with you. I think you're officially up against the time, but we did have a fair amount of back and forth, so I wanted to give you some additional time. But do you have an estimate as to how long, ideally, you would like to continue?
I have a lot more. I had hoped that that was going to be, that should have been the quick portion.
And can you describe to me generally what topics you're planning to go through? I know
I
this
want
is
to, yeah, I want to look at some of the results from the transport model. I want to have a discussion with Dr. Ye about kind of the construction and the calibration of that, because I don't think it's explained in the testimony. And then I have a couple questions on his return water scenario as well.
okay. These topics generally, I think, are of interest, particularly the return. I had my own questions about the return water. Do you have an estimate? I know you said it's long, but what do you have an estimate of time?
Not accurately. I would have estimated coming into today that it was going to be hopefully 45 minutes, and I've only covered one topic.
Mm-hmm.
So probably another 45 minutes, maybe an hour. It really depends on how fast the answers and whether it's a yes or no answer or an explanation.
Well, here's what I'll do. I'll give you 30 minutes. You did know that we had, I mean, it sounds like you knew you were over the time that you had left, but let's start with 30 minutes because I am interested and see where we are then. I think so far it's been productive, and we'll try to stick with, just try to move it along as I think you have been. So
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Dr. Ye, you're familiar with this exhibit?
Yes.
Can we look at page 87? And this exhibit is showing what will happen to the seawater intrusion front after 25 years in the upper 180-foot aquifer. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The initial conditions from your model, that's the brown dashed line, correct?
That's not an entire initial condition. That's the existing seawater intrusion front.
Okay. So the brown dashed line is supposed to be representative of what you believe the seawater intrusion front is today.
Based on the county's seawater intrusion map.
Okay. And you see the explanation at the right, the legend?
Yes,
Okay, and the legend identifies the brown dashed lines as initial TDS concentration, 1500 milligram per liter contour, correct?
correct.
Okay, is that the initial conditions as shown in your model? Or is that a representation of the Monterey County Water Resource Agency map?
Both.
Well, I don't think it can be both, Dr. Ye. It's either the map or it's what's in your model.
Why can't it be both?
Are you saying that what's in your model is only the Monterey County Water Resource Agency map?
Well, that's a part of the initial condition. So we honor that county's seawater intrusion front. We use that to construct our initial condition. So
Okay. If you had data points that were inconsistent with the Monterey County Water Resource Agency map on the seawater intrusion front, would you rely on your data point or the map when constructing your initial conditions?
I rely on county.
The map.
Yeah,
So we had that discussion earlier today, and you showed me all of that data that you said you considered in your initial TDS concentrations. The first thing you did was you took the map and you drew a line where the map says the line is, correct?
I draw that 1,500 TAS contours from the county map, and also look at the other control points.
Okay, and if the other control points were inconsistent with the map, you ignored them, correct?
Is that a hypothetical question? Or no?
That's a real world question. Is that what you did?
Yes, yeah. If there's a yeah, I don't recall any. Yeah, but like if you can point out something, then
Monterey County Water Resource Agency maps, they do not have a specific map identifying the upper 180-foot aquifer, correct?
correct.
So the brown dashed line I'm looking at here is representative of the lower 180-foot aquifer as represented the Monterey County Water Resource Agency maps, correct?
Objection. This states that the map combines upper and lower, so it wouldn't be only the lower. That was what the testimony was before.
Well, let's Mr. Burchard, can you rephrase the question so that it doesn't assume? I'd like to elicit that testimony again from Dr. Ye, just to clarify how the map is constructed. Are you able to put together a question on that one?
Dr. Ye, are you familiar with how the Monterey County Water Resource Agency constructs its seawater intrusion maps?
I don't know the exact procedure.
Okay. You don't know the procedure they use to construct the maps, correct?
But I know generally they look at the abandoned wells.
Have you had any conversations with anybody who represents the Monterey County Water Resource Agency that discussed how the agency creates their seawater intrusion maps?
No,
Have you seen any internal memos from the agency that discusses how they construct their seawater intrusion maps?
no,
You do not have any firsthand knowledge on how they construct their seawater intrusion maps, correct?
correct.
The county does not separate between the upper and the lower 180-foot aquifer, correct?
Yeah, it's a combined aquifer.
do you know the control points the county uses to create their maps?
I'm not aware of that. I just rely on county's work.
Okay, so you don't know the control points. So you can't tell me how many control points the county relies on that are located in the upper 180-foot aquifer, correct?
Yeah, I didn't investigate that.
Can you tell me if the county relies on a single control point in the upper 180-foot aquifer?
Because already answered, he doesn't know what they did.
I'd like to hear the response from Dr. Ye, please.
My understanding is county doesn't distinguish the upper and the lower 180 based on the information provided by them. It's 180 foot aquifer.
Right, that wasn't the question, Dr. Ye. Are you aware, or do you know, whether the county used a single control point in the upper 180-foot aquifer when constructing their seawater intrusion maps?
I don't know.
So in relying on the county's maps, you have the same initial conditions in both the upper and the lower 180-foot aquifer for seawater intrusion, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the data, there is data available that is inconsistent with the Monterey County Water Resource Agency maps, correct?
Yeah, so for that statement, I'm not aware of that. It's you told me that's not a hypothetical question.
Dr. Ye, did you review the data from the Fort Ord wells that Ms. Nelson cites in her testimony?
I think we just received that last Friday. I have not.
No, I'm sorry, that's the Monterey County Water Resource Agency confidential data you're thinking of. The Fort Ord well data is MCWD 11. So it's really old. Did you review that data when constructing your initial conditions?
Yeah, like I mentioned, we use 2019 data. The Fort Ord area, they when we check the database, we don't have 2019 data available.
You have water year 2019 data available from Fort Ord, correct?
Right.
Okay. Did you personally review that data?
I review the data, but not by sources. I review the data for the control points and to develop those contours.
I don't understand what that means. Did you review the data from the Fort Ord wells or not? It's a very simple question.
Yeah, I use those data. I review the data used to construct those contours. I don't know like the well is from which sources.
Dr. Ye, who constructed the contours?
My staff.
Who?
CC.
And again, the initial condition, the 1500 line initial condition contour comes directly from the Monterey County Water Resource Agency map, correct?
Correct.
So there's no other data to review other than the Monterey County Water Resource Agency map, correct?
Correct.
So you don't know whether you reviewed the four-door data or not, correct?
I look at the available 2019 data.
Did Ms. Cece put together data in a separate table, and is that what you reviewed?
No, it's the contour maps with control data points.
Okay, and you don't know whether those had the four-door data in them or not.
Right.
So you don't know whether you reviewed the four-door data.
Correct.
Okay, did you know that when you wrote in your testimony that you reviewed the four-door data, or that you considered the four-door data?
Yeah, I know the data we ask for from photo database.
We go back to, and I'm trying to do this without jumping between too many exhibits. But can we go back to exhibit 177, page 39 for a second? Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the right page. I apologize.
I think this was a page we looked at before, right, Mr. Burchard? I don't think I
Yeah,
ever either.
yeah. Never mind. Can we just go back to 187? I'm sorry. All right. Dr. Ye, we looked at an exhibit before, and I apologize, I can't remember the page number off the top of my head, that listed the data that was looked at for the initial concentrations. Do you recall reading that?
Yes.
Who drafted that paragraph?
Based on the information provided by staff and the communication with them.
I'm very sorry, you cut out in the beginning. I didn't hear your answer.
I did based on the information provided by my staff.
Okay. You did based on what your staff told you, correct?
Right.
And you don't know whether the Fort Ord data was included, correct?
Yeah, my understanding that data, they're all old data. So we don't have data for 2019.
We go to Marina Coast Water District 11, please. And while we're getting there, Dr. Ye, is it now your testimony that you didn't consider the Fort Ord data because it was old? Is that what you're saying now?
Yeah, if all the data we did, I didn't consider, but if in 2019, then we use that.
Can we go to PDF page 13, please? Okay. You see the date measured column, Dr. Ye?
Yes,
Okay, that's water year 2019, correct?
yes,
Did you use it or did you not use it, or do you not know?
I do not know.
Thank you. Can we go back to CalAm, page 187, please? And I'd like to focus in on that top left square, scenario 1B. Okay. The brown line is the seawater intrusion front as depicted in the Monterey County Water Resource Agency maps for the entire 180-foot aquifer, correct?
Right.
Okay. And that is what is in the initial conditions for CalAm's transport model, correct?
Yes,
And the purple line is what CalAm simulates the seawater intrusion front will be 25 years from today with no project, correct?
yes,
So CalAm's transport model is predicting that the seawater intrusion front is receding in the 180, 400-foot aquifer subbasin, correct?
yes,
With no project, the seawater intrusion front is going to be moving backwards, correct?
yes,
And it looks like on the bottom, the seawater intrusion front in the Monterey subbasin will recede in some areas and will expand in other areas. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, and can we scroll down a little bit to the bottom left scenario? This is the with project pumping scenario minus the no project scenario, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the seawater intrusion front is still receding in the 180, 400-foot aquifer subbasin, correct?
What does that mean, still receding?
It was receding in the no project scenario, and it's receding in the project pumping scenario as well. Correct?
Yes,
And in the Monterey subbasin, the project will cause the seawater intrusion front to expand to the east in a portion near the coast, correct?
yes. Near the coast, that area, it's already seawater intruded.
If we ignore the Monterey County, the Fort Ord data, as you did, then you believe that area is already seawater intruded, correct?
Yes,
And again, to be clear, you did not fully consider all the data in that area in making that opinion, correct?
Objection, he said he did not know.
Well, he's giving the opinions, right?
But you asked him if it was considered by his staff, and he said he did not know.
Well, I asked if it was considered by him, and if he doesn't know, I think it's safe to say it's not considered. Dr. Ye?
But Mr. Burchard can rephrase, just try the question again, just to make sure we have it fresh in our mind, please.
Dr. Ye, you made a statement that the area in the Monterey subbasin is already seawater intruded. And then my statement to you is you are not considering the Fort Ord data in making that opinion, correct?
I think my opinion, I also look at MCWD model simulate TDS concentration.
Or are you saying that MCWD model is superior to yours and therefore
No,
you
no,
look
no,
at them for verification?
Yeah, I just like you know, to look at that, then to understand the future TDS concentration in that area. Because we know this is a prediction into the future under assumed steady state conditions.
Which may or may not be considering all of the available data in the Monterey subbasin, correct?
Yeah, but like even you using the that photo data, as you still have a very big gap between that control point to the seawater intrusion. But when you run the model, then you see a migration of the seawater intrusion. Then so that just demonstrate that that's the future conditions. It's going to happen.
Let me unpack that for a second. You don't know if the Monterey County Water Resource Agency maps are based on any control points in the upper 180-foot aquifer, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know whether your model incorporated any of the Fort Ord data in the Monterey subbasin, correct?
Correct.
And yet you're opining here that this area will become seawater intruded anyway, correct?
Yeah, based on the modeling assumptions and the model results from both model.
Based on your assumptions, your opinion is that this area will become seawater intruded.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter where you put that initial seawater intrusion front.
Right, can we go up a little bit to the square above this real quick? Dr. Ye, do you believe that this scenario 1B, this top left square we're looking at, do you believe this figure is a reliable predictor of future conditions in the upper 180-foot aquifer?
Yeah, I think it's reliable under the assumptions for the regional hydraulic gradient and the assumed pumping.
If the seawater intrusion front is receding in the 180, 400-foot aquifer, as shown here, without the project, is it possible that the interfingered regions of freshwater that we heard Mr. Durbin testify about yesterday could become permanent or last longer?
Sorry, would you please repeat your question?
If the seawater intrusion front is receding, as shown in this figure, in the 180, 400-foot aquifer subbasin, is it possible that the interfingered regions of freshwater that Mr. Durbin testified about yesterday could last longer or become permanent?
Yeah, I don't know. That interfingering it's very complicated. Yeah.
Okay. Can we look at Exhibit 190, please?
And Mr. Burchard, just so you know, I'm looking for a time to take, the witness has been going for more than an hour, to take a 5-minute break. Would this be a good time?
this would be a great time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. I have 10:18 on my clock, so we'll come back at 10:23. All right, I apologize. We're back on camera. I think we're, there's Dr. Ye. My tiles moved, and there's Mr. Burchard. Go ahead. Mr. Burchard, back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. Dr. Ye, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, can we pull up CalAm 90, please, which is Dr. Ye's slides, and look at slide 18. We go to slide 18, please, Ms. Mullen. Dr. Ye, are you familiar with this slide?
Yes.
Did you draft the text on the slide?
Yes.
Okay, the first bullet point, it says initial TDS concentrations for the deep aquifer are extremely low and unrealistic when compared to mining well and production well data. Correct?
Yes.
Do you think this is important? Was the initial TDS concentrations in the deep aquifer an important consideration in the reliability of either of the transport models?
Yeah, I think it's important to honor the observed data, the real world data.
So to be clear, we just talked about this for about an hour, but in the 180-foot aquifer, CalAm just took the Monterey County Water Resource Agency maps, correct?
Correct.
And if the real world data disagreed with those maps, CalAm relied on the map, correct?
Correct.
Okay, in the simulations that we're doing and the potential effects of the project, is the 180-foot aquifer more or less important for our simulations than the deep aquifer?
Yeah, to me, those deep aquifer are important to evaluate MCWD wells. Based on MCWD model, there are 4 wells produce water from deep well.
Dr. Ye, have any of the models that CalAm has constructed for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project shown effects in the deep aquifers caused by the project?
No.
Is there currently seawater intrusion in the deep aquifer in the 180-400 or the Monterey subbasin?
No.
Okay, so if we're intending to do a transport model and model the flow of seawater intrusion, would you agree that it's more important to consider real world data in the 180-foot aquifer than it is the deep aquifer?
Like I say, I think MCWD Marina experts claim like potential risk to impact MCWD wells. There are 4 wells screened in deep aquifer. So it's reasonable to look at what's happening for those wells.
Okay. And it was important to rely on real world data,
Yes.
which CalAm did not do when it put its initial concentrations in the 180-foot aquifer, correct?
I disagree with that general statement. We did use available data, and also we honor county's map.
Okay. The map that you don't know what data goes into the creation of, correct?
Yeah, I rely on county's work.
Okay. The second bullet point here, you criticize the TDS level that Marina Coast used in the CEMEX percolation pond. Is that correct?
Yes.
The operation or the CEMEX operations important for the transport models?
Not important because for the future prediction, that population terminate, but it's important for the model calibration. It appears to me you use a very high concentration. This is ocean water concentration for that percolation pond, but then you use a much lower concentration for that offshore general constant head boundary. So what's happening is like, then you can calibrate the model, but it's really, going the other way. You should use a lower concentration for the percolation pond and a higher concentration for the constant head boundary offshore.
Okay, so
really,
would you agree that the CEMEX operations are important for the calibration of the flow models?
it's like depending on what you look at. If you look at the NW1, 3, 4 water level, then it's important.
Dr. Ye, I apologize, but when you lean back, your mic cuts out a little bit. So feel free to think about your answer, but when you start, you need to be closer to your mic so that everyone can hear you completely.
Thank you, Mr. Osias. Okay, so if I heard you correctly, Dr. Ye, the CEMEX operations have an effect on the water levels at MW 1, 3, and 4, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and they also have, the CEMEX operations also have an effect on the ocean water percentage observed in the slant wells, correct?
During slant well pumping test.
What do you know about the CEMEX operations?
It's the information provided by geoscience field staff.
Okay, is that information in the record?
Yes, yeah, we provide that information in our phase 2 modeling report.
You provided the information on CEMEX in your phase 2 modeling report? Do you remember what exhibit that is? Is that exhibit 141?
Yes.
Can we look at exhibit 141, please? Do you know what page you want us to look at, Dr. Ye?
Let's go to the table of contents. Going down. We keep going down.
I think continue to scroll down, Ms. Mullen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To model calibration.
Are you looking for the analysis of OWP in the test well, Dr. Ye?
Yes.
Okay, I believe that's PDF page 38.
Let's go there, Ms. Mullen, please. We'll check.
As I said, Dr. Ye?
Yes, yeah, the second paragraph.
The second paragraph talks about TDS concentrations observed in monitoring wells, not necessarily CEMEX, correct?
Okay, next, yeah.
Let's go down 2 paragraphs. Is this what you're looking for? Is this what we're looking for, Dr. Ye?
No, not here.
Let's look here for a second. It says recharge from daily CEMEX operations was also incorporated for this analysis, including the discharge of dredge pond and pumped well water to percolation ponds near MP, WSP, TSW, and MW1. You see that?
Right, yeah,
You understand that sentence?
yes.
Okay. Now, my understanding of the CEMEX operations is there's a dredge pond, which is filled with basically ocean water. And then there's a percolation pond, which usually has a combination of dredge water and well water. Is that your understanding?
Yes,
Okay, so CEMEX pumps well water from the property, which has a TDS of less than ocean water.
yeah.
That goes into the percolation pond, and then they also take from the dredge pond, and that goes into the percolation pond, and that's how the operations work.
Yeah, that water, I think based on our field staff, their information accounts for probably 20% of that recharge water, and the TDS it's about 13,000. So if you mix this 2 water, you get 28,000 199 milligram per liter.
You said 20% that water. 20% of what water?
20% of that recharge water to the perk pump.
Is what?
It's 20% from the well, 80% from the dredge pump.
Okay. Does CalAm have data regarding how much water the CEMEX wells discharge into the percolation pond?
Based on estimation and the flow, you know, the calculation.
So is that they don't have hard data on the amount of water, but you have enough that you believe you can estimate the amount of flow from the well into the pond. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, what's the data you have that you're using to base this estimation?
Yeah, I need to find look at our report. It's in one of the exhibit.
Okay, can we look at CalAm exhibit 37? Can you scroll down a little so Dr. Ye can see what this is? Do you know what this exhibit is, Dr. Ye?
Yes.
Can we scroll down further to see who authored it?
Can we go to the next page, Mr. Burchard? Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Ms. Mullen.
All right, so Dr. Ye, you didn't author this technical memorandum, but are you familiar with it?
Not the entire report. It's like any information useful for my modeling work.
Is there any?
Yeah.
Do you know if there's any information in this report that's useful for the discussion we're currently having?
Objection. Useful to who? What does useful mean?
Is there anything useful to you, Dr. Ye, regarding the CEMEX operations in this report?
For the CEMEX operation, I think that's the recent work we conducted for 2022. This model. So this is a 2017 report. I pretty much rely on recent discussion with our field staff.
Okay, is that? So you've had recent discussions with your field staff?
Yeah.
In 2022?
2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Regarding data they collected in 2022?
Yeah, just like estimation, like how much recharge for the CEMEX operation.
Did you personally have the discussions with field staff, or did somebody else do that?
It's kind of like communication within several people. Yeah.
Did you personally talk to any of the field staff about this data that you need?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Did they give you data, or did they give you their estimates?
Estimates.
What are those estimates based on?
Based on the well pumping capacity and like how many hours pump per day, and also the flow, the stage of that channel, velocity. We have a video to quantify that velocity, then do the calculation.
I'm sorry, did you say you have a video?
Yeah, to quantify the velocity of the flow in the channel.
So you calculate the velocity of the flow in the channel in 2022.
No, I don't think. I think the percolation already terminate in 2022.
The percolation or the dredge pond terminated in 2022?
Percolation,
Okay, so
the recharge. Yeah.
So the recharge is terminated in 2022. So who did you talk to and what data did you get?
I talked to our principal geohydrology, Brian Villalobos, and Seth, our field people.
Okay. And if the percolation pond had terminated in 2022, what data from 2022 could they have provided you to use in your current model?
Yeah, that's it's a prior. They have that information. Yeah.
So you talked to them in 2023
Yes.
about data from 2022?
No, the data is like before 2022 when they actually operate that.
Okay. Do you know when that data was obtained?
I don't.
Okay. Do you think it's likely the data that they're describing in Exhibit 37 from Exhibit 7 was drafted in October of 2017 and revised in November of 2017?
I don't know what's in the I'm not sure if it's in the 27 report.
Okay, can we go back to Exhibit 190? I want to focus on, you had said that you estimated the TDS in the percolation pond at 28,199 milligrams per liter, correct?
Yes.
How did you calculate that number? Well, I'm sorry, let me back up a second. Did you calculate that number or is that from somebody else?
I did the calculation based on the TDS and the flow provided by our field staff.
Okay. And when you did the calculation, what was the assumed TDS in the dredge pond?
32,300 milligram per liter.
What was the assumed TDS in coming from Calam's wells? The assumed TDS from Cemex wells?
12,920 milligram per liter.
Okay, and how much water went from Cemex's wells into the percolation ponds on a daily basis?
I just give you I don't remember exactly number. It's about 950 acre feet per year. The total.
That's the amount of water that went from the well into the percolation pond, or that's the amount of water that recharged from the Cemex operations?
Yeah, it's the total from the well and the dredge pond. Then well accounts for 20% roughly.
Okay. So again, you do not know the amount of well water that went into the percolation pond?
950 multiplied by 20%. Yeah.
And I just want to be clear, the assumed TDS concentrations in the percolation pond, they have an effect on the simulated OWP during the test well period, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's important to get the TDS concentration in the percolation pond correct.
Yes.
Okay. Stepping back a second. Did you include the percolation pond in any of the prior to 2023, did you include the percolation pond in any of the prior versions of CalAM's models?
No.
And you've had this data since at least 2017, correct?
Correct.
And it is very important to be able to accurately predict OWP during the test well period, correct?
Yeah, those are just for the model calibration, not for the future predictor scenario.
And if I wanted to see if my model accurately predicted past OWP, would it be important to have the percolation pond in the model?
Yes, but in the previous work, we haven't done any model calibration using the TDS concentration extract from test and well. But like, then become more important is because during the phase 1 work, Ms. Nielsen misapply our 2022 transient model, use that model to simulate the ocean water percentage from the test and well. So first of all, she used 2019 TDS concentration that much higher than the pre-test and well pumping concentration. Secondly, that model does not include the CMAX operation recharge, and that's why her study show very high ocean water percentage compared to the observed ocean water percentage. So that's why in our recent work we include that CMAX operation recharge in the model.
Okay, and how much water from the dredge pond would be deposited into the percolation pond on a daily basis for CEMEX operations?
Yeah, about 760 acre-feet per year.
Okay. You don't have any field data regarding how much water from the dredge pond is deposited into the percolation pond, correct?
Yeah, we know the flow velocity and the channel width, so we know how much total flow, and also we know the operation for that well based on the conversation between our field staff and CMAX.
Okay, so there's no data regarding how much well water goes into the percolation pond. It's based on a conversation with someone representing CEMEX.
Yeah, what's estimate based on the best information available.
Well, it's the only information available, correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, you keep saying channel width. What channel are you referring to?
It's a channel from the discharge outlet to the percolation pump.
Discharge outlet of what?
Of the sand washing.
So is that dredge water? Is that well water? Is it a combination of both?
Combination of both.
Okay. So you measured the channel, the depth, and you took a video of the velocity. Well, you took a video of the channel, and then you calculated velocity based on the video.
Right.
Okay, when's the video from?
I don't have that information for you right now.
Do you know what year the video is from?
I don't. Apparently after 2017.
Okay, was the video taken before, during, or after the test slant well period?
I don't know.
Okay.
Ms. Gunzi, can we get a time check? Or or Dr. Ye's been on the stand for 2.5 hours almost.
Yes, and I'm going to remember this, Mr. Asias. I'm sure you'll remind me as well when it's returned. Mr. Burchard, I think. Well, go ahead.
Dr. Ye has testified that the TDS concentrations in the percolation pond are directly relate to the OWP in the test slant wells during the test slant well period. And I'm trying to determine how he came to the initial TDS concentrations he uses in his model, because the calculations are not provided in the reports. It just says, I looked at factors, here's the result, but he hasn't shown his work. And based on these conversations now, I don't know what any of this is based on. We have well data based on a conversation with somebody at CEMEX, and we have a video of a dredge channel or a channel from some unknown point in time. And then I'm going to try and ask Dr. Ye how he looks at the video of the channel and determines what is dredge water and what is well water. And then I would like to know if he has TDS readings from the percolation pond, if he has any water level data from the percolation pond before, during, or after the test slant well.
All right, that sounds to me like that can be accomplished in well, we'll see, but less than 10 minutes. I think it's a fair to follow up on this line of questioning, although I think I can understand we need to get answers and get to the bottom of this. I understand the importance. I am also interested in the return water issue. But I'm also mindful that Dr. Ye, I mean, we're once again coming up, not quite yet, but we're coming up on a need for another 5-minute break, which it's been quite some time. So Mr. Burchard, absolutely not more than 10 minutes on this topic. And then let's move to the return water issue.
Okay.
By 11:10.
Dr. Ye, do you have TDS concentration data, hard data of the TDS concentrations in the percolation pond at any time?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you have TDS concentration data from the channel you're talking about at any time?
No.
Do you have water level data from the percolation pond at any time?
No.
Do you have water level data from the channel you were talking about at any time?
Yes, yeah.
From the channel?
Yeah, from the canal, yeah.
Okay. Where do you know where that is?
If you look at the aerial photo, you can easily see that.
So you don't have hand measurements, you have a photograph.
Yeah, not for me, but I think our field staff, they have the configuration.
And how much recharge from the percolation pond do you have in your model?
About 950 acre feet per year.
Is it 985 acre feet a year? Does that sound right?
950, what did you say?
985.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. How did you get that number?
Yeah, based on that flow velocity and the configuration of the channel, that calculation.
So your entire calculation on the amount of recharge from the percolation pond and the TDS in the percolation pond is based primarily on a video of the channel that flows to the percolation pond?
Yes, yeah.
And again, the TDS concentrations in the percolation pond they directly relate to the OWP observed during the test slant well period, correct?
Yes.
Could the CEMEX operations, well, I think you also said, could the CEMEX operations also have had an effect on the surrounding monitoring wells?
Yes, probably like a feet differences without that CMAX recharge. So
it did affect drawdown.
Water level elevation.
Okay. Do you think the fact that the CMAX operations were operating during the test slant well, does that make the test slant well, that test unreliable?
I disagree.
Okay. You said that the percolation pond was discontinued in 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then a couple weeks ago, Ms. Nelson reached out to you and she asked for data from the monitoring wells around the CEMEX operation from June of 2022 to August of 2023, correct?
Objection, that misstates the request. It was for, and we have the document, it was for all well data that would be posted on the CalAm public website since
It's
2022.
MCWD. It's MCWD 174. If we could just look at it, please.
Great. This may take a minute. It's a new folder, MCWD. I'm sorry, it was MCWD 124?
174.
174.
So the request is down farther.
Yeah, if you look at page, PDF page 2. There's an August 20, there we go. Dr. Ye, this is your email, correct?
I'm sorry, we can go back to this is, one sec. I objected to the question because you asked about CEMEX well data. And my objection was that the request was for all data. Do you want to go back to the beginning?
I didn't say CEMEX well data. Okay. I said the project monitoring well data.
All right. So I apologize.
This is, I don't-
Let me
can we talk
finish,
a little to
please.
see the date.
Let's pause, let's let Mr. Asias go and then Mr. Burchard, back to you.
Thank
So
you.
Mr. Asias.
I mean, this exhibit's up. This isn't the request. I just asked that we go to the beginning of the email chain so that the request for data can be seen, because that's what the question was about. So if we keep scrolling down, unless they didn't put it in, and I'm sure they did, we have to go to the bottom of the email chain where there's a request for well data, monitoring well data. And I just thought we should start with that before we go on, because the
And then
question is assumed.
I thank you,
Keep
Mr.
going.
Asias. And then Mr. Burchard, if you
That's fine.
want
We
to
could go
rework
down,
the question, you may, or we can work based on the request here.
we can go down to August 21, 448. There you go. Ms. Nelson, Dr. Ye, did you receive this email from Ms. Nelson on August 21st?
Yes.
Okay, and she's asking for hand water level measurements, specific conductance data, and TDS concentrations detected in groundwater samples collected from all of the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project monitoring wells between June 2022 and August 2023, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You have that data, correct?
I don't. It's our company. They work on a different project.
Geoscience has that data, correct?
Let me see. Can you go up to the email reply?
Well, I think we can do this. Can we go to the August 25th, 452 response from Dr. Ye? It's on page 1. It's the top. Dr. Ye, you sent this email, correct?
Right.
Okay, and you say at the direction of CalAM's counsel, I have forwarded your request for certain well data for the period June 2022 to March 2023 and Geoscience's responsive work to Mike Betts at Allen Matkins, who engage with your counsel with respect to next steps. You see that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we.
So just to be clear, Geoscience had the work that Ms. Nelson was requesting, correct?
Objection, the request was through August of 2023 and the response is through March.
Dr. Ye, does Geoscience have the well data from June of 2022 to March of 2023?
We have the database. I think the available data at that time is through September 2022. Then we had to clean up, to get the format Ms. Nelson request. We spent a couple of days to compile that information up to March 2023.
So you have this data in the format Ms. Nelson, by this data, I mean June 2022 to March 2023. You have that data in the format Ms. Nelson requested, and that data will be from after the CEMEX operations ceased, or the percolation ponds ceased, correct?
Yeah, like I say, at that request, we need to spend a couple of days to get the data up to March 2023.
And you spent that time to get that data up to March 2023, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you have it like currently, or better yet, Mr. Betts currently has it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there a reason that you did not provide it to Ms. Nelson?
It says right there in the answer on the screen. And I'd ask him not to discuss conversations, but it's direction to counsel.
He is a retained expert who is testifying as an expert. He has no privilege with counsel.
Didn't say I had privilege. I said the answer is on the screen.
I'll let I'm going to ask Dr. Ye to respond, and I'm going to give you one more question, Mr. Burchard, and then we're going to move on to return water. So, Dr. Ye, you can answer to the best of your ability.
Yeah, like the the email here at the direction of KLM Council. My understanding, there's a certain procedure to release this data.
Where is that understanding from?
Based on our principal geohydrologist, he handled all this data and data collection and data publication. Usually they prepare this, then submit to Karen first before release that information.
All right, so I'm going to stop you Mr. Richard there, and let's turn to return water, but I want to ask you first, do you anticipate more than about 15 minutes on return water, or at least seeking to go more than 15 minutes on return water?
No, my questions on return water, I think, can be done pretty quickly.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Can we look at CalAm 177, please? I would like to look at PDF page 169. Dr. Ye, this figure is intended to show the difference in drawdown under what you call your return water scenario, correct?
Yes.
Now, my understanding of that scenario is that you calculated OWP and then you provided whatever that calculation came out to be, and then you reduced pumping in the Castroville area by that amount of water. Is that what you did?
Yes.
Who created the scenario? Who designed the scenario?
It's Mr. Leffler, Mr. Durbin, and myself.
Okay. Now, the water is provided to the Castroville area. Is that because of the return water settlement agreement?
I'm not aware of that. I pretty much follow the assumption used by Hydro Focus for the project EIR modeling work.
Okay, Mr. Leffler is on the panel. Does he know if the water was given to Castroville based on the return water settlement agreement?
Are you asking Dr. Ye if Mr. Leffler knows?
I'm asking Mr. Leffler if that's okay with Ms. Kinsey. I'm trying to speed things up.
That's fine. If Mr. Leffler, I can't see my full screen
He's
here.
here.
Great, Mr. Leffler, please go ahead.
That's my understanding, that it's related to that, but I won't claim to know, all the details of, the agreement or such, but that's my understanding, is it's related to that.
Okay. The legend on the right, it says 6% return, and then in parentheses, 1,043 acre feet a year is used to replace pumping from 400-foot aquifer for wells in the Castroville area.
Yes.
Okay, that's the scenario?
Yes.
Okay, can we look at CalAm 67, please? And can we go to PDF page 6? And we scroll down to recital DD.
Sorry, and you can add this minute back or 10 seconds, but could the witness see the front page of this for more than
Sure.
a nanosecond?
Thank you, Ms. Mullen.
Either Dr. Ye or Mr. Leffler, are you familiar with this agreement?
I'm not.
Mr. Leffler?
Oh, he seems to be off. Oh, there he is.
I've not reviewed this in detail.
But this is the return water agreement, correct?
That's what it appears to say on the cover.
Okay. Could we just go to PDF page 6 real quick? And in DD, it says in the planning term sheet, CCSD. Do you understand that to be the Castroville Community Services District? Either Dr. Ye or Mr. Leffler.
Okay.
Okay, it says CCSD submits that it currently relies on groundwater from the SRGB, the Salinas River Groundwater Basin, to meet Castroville's water demands, which use averages approximately 780 acre feet. Do you see that annually?
Yes.
Okay. So the return water scenario that you came up with, you're reducing the pumping in the area by more than 780 acre feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not exactly consistent with the return water agreement. Would you agree?
Objection. The fact that it's not consistent with a recital doesn't mean it's not consistent with the agreement.
I think that's a
That's
a
fine.
fair objection, Mr. Burchard.
Sure.
Okay.
Can we go back to exhibit 177? If the return water is anticipated to go to CCSD and they're only pumping about 800 acre feet a year, where is the other 1,000 plus, or sorry, 200 plus acre feet a year of reduction coming from? How did you determine what wells to reduce?
We look at the wells in the model pumping from 400-foot aquifer in that general area.
When you looked at those, did you look to see whether any of those wells were inside the seawater intrusion front as plotted by CalAm in its initial conditions?
No.
Did you look to see whether any of those wells were inside the simulated seawater intrusion front after any period of time shown in CalAm's modeled simulations?
No.
Okay. Can we zoom in on layer 9? This is layer 9 is the 400-foot aquifer. Is that right, Dr. Ye?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm looking at circles here. Am I to assume that the reduction occurred within the smaller circles near where it says minus 0.5 and minus 1?
Yes.
Okay, so if we look, it looks to be a little south and a little east of that forked area there. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think that's the intersection of California 156 and 183. Can we now look at exhibit 187? And PDF page 93. It might be, I'm sorry, I think it'll be PDF page 89 in the revised version. Okay, and can we zoom in on the top? Well, can we scroll down a little so Dr. Ye can see what the figure is for? This is the 400-foot aquifer, right, Dr. Ye?
Yes.
Okay, and then scenario 1B at the top, can we zoom in on 1B in the area of Castroville that we were just looking at? Can we zoom in more? We zoom in one more. We scroll up just a little bit. Or the other way, sorry. Scroll down just a little bit. Dr. Ye, can you make out that fork that we were looking at before, where the California 156 and the 183 intersect?
Yes.
All right, so would you agree that the wells you reduced in your recharge scenario are predicted by CalAM's model to be in an area that is already seawater intruded and will be seawater intruded regardless of the project?
Yeah, this is under the assumption for the steady state condition.
That's correct. And under that assumption, CalAM's model predicts that those wells will become seawater intruded, correct?
Yes, in
Okay,
the
and-
next 25 years. Yeah.
The brown line is the initial seawater intrusion concentration, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, it looks like it may be seawater intruded already.
Or roughly at the border. Yeah.
Okay. So if those wells become seawater intruded, they're going to have to shut off regardless of the return water agreement, correct?
What do you mean regardless? I'm sorry, objection, vague and ambiguous. If the
If the
return
well-
water is provided,
If the wells
they'd be
become
turned
sea-
off anyway.
Okay. Dr. Ye, would you agree? The wells become seawater intruded, they're going to be turned off?
Yes.
Yes. And when you ran your initial scenario for the return water agreement, were the wells on or off?
Initial with the well on.
With the well on. This map indicates the wells will be seawater intruded. So shouldn't the initial run be done with the wells off?
I think that's the modeling assumptions. You know, you can do iterative model runs to do that, but it's really at the end you want to compare to no project condition and the project conditions.
I agree. And if we want to compare the no project conditions, don't you think we should turn off the wells that will have to stop pumping because they're seawater intruded?
Yeah, I don't think you have to, because lots of assumption here, for example, like the steady state, you know, under certain average hydrology. It's like you assume that those assumptions.
So are you suggesting that the model might be over predicting seawater intrusion?
Objection,
Yeah.
just 1 second. The question ignores the model design of steady state. And so the model's predicting what happens under a steady state. If things change over time, those are reflected in a transient model, which this model is not, by agreement and order. So the question is as an impossible hypothetical under the condition of models that the experts were directed to make.
So using the steady state model, Dr. Ye, I'll withdraw the question.
Okay.
Dr. Ye, would you agree that using steady state models, you can't really make this comparison accurately?
I think regarding the project impact, you compare to with without project. That's you know, yes, it's correct. We can do a good calculation.
But that doesn't account for wells that need to stop pumping when they become seawater intruded, correct?
Yeah, that's the limitation of the steady state, because you do the steady state, you generate the hydraulic gradient. You only have one hydraulic gradient. You cannot change that, after you get that for your solid transport model.
So the limits of the model have an effect on some of the scenarios we're running. Would you agree?
I have run transient model in 2008, 2015, 2022. I just don't see any, they yield the similar modeling results for the impact produced by the project.
Did those models that you just mentioned also have wells pumping in areas that the model predicted as seawater intruded?
Yes or no? The model handle the pumping are differently.
Which model turned off the wells that were in the seawater intruded area?
Some of the scenario with reduced pumping by different then use, but it's not like you turn off the wells. You look at the seawater intrusion.
When you say reduced pumping scenario, are you referring to the scenario D in the current phase 2 and phase 3 analysis?
This is for the steady state, but for previous model, we have a different land use assumptions with there's differences in pumping conditions.
Did you do reduced pumping scenarios with your prior models?
No.
So Mr. Brochard, I'm going to point out, I think we're departing from the return water issue, and it's been well over 15 minutes. So if you have one or two more follow-up questions, we can do that. But
That's okay. I am done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brochard. Thank you very much, Dr. Ye. I know it was a long morning. I appreciate it. And Ms. Mullen, thank you for pulling this down, that I can see the room, so to speak. I think at this point, what we probably should do is take a brief break, because I'm going to look next, I think, to Mr. Osias, whether you have redirect. No, we're not doing that now. We're going through all of the witnesses first. Sorry. What do we want to do? Do you have any preference about whether I look to both Mr. Osias, Mr. Brochard, and Ms. Meisenheimer? Do you have a preference about whether we power through and start on cross-examination of Mr. Loeffler, or whether we'd like to take an early break? Yes, Mr. Brochard.
Mr. Wilkins and I believe Mr. Spalding will be handling the cross-examination of Mr. Loeffler, so I will leave it to them. I personally would like to have lunch, but I will do whatever anybody else here wants to do.
Okay.
Good morning, Ms. Kenzie. I think it makes the most sense to take a break, clear our heads, and come back after lunch for the cross of Mr. Loeffler.
All right. Does anyone have any objections to that?
My only objection would be if we intend to plan another 2.5 hours of cross of Mr. Loeffler. That's the proceeding, I don't mean today, but the proceeding in front of the hearing office has been going on for over a year, and revisiting topics in the depth. I mean, I have a lot of redirect. I apologize for that, but Exhibit 37, for example, the one that Mr. Brochard brought up, that had CEMEX pond information, has TDS data in it.
Not exactly, but yes, that's, I had it ready if Dr. Ye wanted it.
Okay, and the problem is that was an exhibit for phase 1. Dr. Ye, after an hour and a half is asked to recall everything that's in Exhibit 37. He didn't. If we're going to proceed in that fashion, we're not going to finish. And of course, where we don't finish, the prejudice falls on my client, because this process needs to be finished for this project to go back to court so that the project can get ruled on, which is a condition of the Coastal Commission. So delay is not in our interest, but is in the other side's interest. So I'm concerned about the clock, and I don't mean to be argumentative about that, but this is the first opportunity to raise that as a concern.
I understand. I hear you, Mr. Asias. I mean, there is some slight disadvantage here because I have not directly, although I've reviewed many of the hearing tapes, I have not sat through quite the same process that Mr. Lilly sat through. And so I don't have the same deja vu experience that many of you may or may not be having. And so you can appreciate that.
If I may just respond quickly to that
Sure.
point, and we do have 2.5 days left here to cover these witnesses and our witnesses. In the first round, we had depositions before any of the testimony, and we were able to, so to speak, use that deposition experience to curtail or cut to the chase on our cross-examination. And in the most recent round, the AHO asked questions in between, which, and we were having this last phase here. This time around, we have 2 new rounds of testimony, and we have not had depositions. And this is our only chance and last chance to ask questions. And certainly it does relate back to some former issue. I think it's important that we are able to conduct a thorough cross that's moves along as quickly as possible. We're not here to delay things, but I think we have time to finish the cross. And I don't think that the fact that we limited it previously, given certain advantages we had at that time, but like I said, having a deposition on the exact testimony that was in front of us, and that the HO had asked questions last time that was able to shorten some of our cross. I'm just concerned when Mr. Lilly was presiding over this, he did give latitude. And so I just don't want to suggest that we can't finish cross on some arbitrary timeline of 45 minutes. And that's all I want to add at this point. I think you're doing, I think you're handling it appropriately, Ms. Kinsey, and I think we can continue to do it that way. We will tell you what we want to cross on, and you will give us the clear direction on how much time you'll give us.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. How about this? I'm going to put you on the spot, and Mr. Spalding, what is your reasonable, the one thing that would be helpful is to get a reasonable estimate of cross, which I understand is something of a shot in the dark, but you have cross-examined Mr. Leffler before, so you may have some understanding of how the pace goes. Do you have an estimate of how long your cross will take?
Mr. Spalding is going first. My guess is I have roughly an hour. But that could, depending on how responses go, that could change.
Mr. Spalding, do you have a guesstimate?
I do. I'd say 45 minutes.
Okay, so an hour and 45 minutes is well over I think it was an hour, what we had initially set the time limit for. What I'm going to start with is say an hour and a half. Mr. Asias, I'm remembering all of this, and it will be, CalAM will be afforded an equal extent of leeway as long as the questioning is productive. It'll be the same issue whether or not the questioning is productive. I'm listening and I'm following along, and in some cases, if it helps to lay a foundation of where you're going, for example, Mr. Brochard, I think you were in some areas laying a foundation with respect to, I'm just guessing, but with respect to whether there was adequate background data in the record to support some of the model runs that I'm using the terms loosely. But sometimes it may be helpful just to tell me where you're going and then lay it out. If we can circumvent anything that way, with sort of reducing the formalities and laying it out. But I catch on pretty quickly, and I think cross is mostly it's for the record, but it's also for largely for my benefit. We can do that. So let's plan on an hour and a half initially. We can split it amongst the two of you as you see fit. And then I would like to take a slightly longer break because my team is both going to have lunch and then also we're going to confer. I assume all of you are doing the same type of schedule. So I'm going to say it's 11:37. I propose we come back at 12:45. Is there anything else we should address before we break for lunch, our midday break?
No, thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you, Dr. Ye, once again, if you're still there for your time today. I know you're probably still with us listening to the rest of the testimony, but I realize it's a long time to be answering questions. So thank you very much. I will see all of you at, we will be logging out of Zoom and logging back in, but I'll see you at 12:45 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.